Good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the last session with Matt Abraham. He is a lecturer in organizational behavior at Stanford University. So how many of you have been put in a position to make a presentation just at the nick of time when you really weren't prepared? Probably all of you. And our speaker today, he is a specialist in these things. And I don't know if any of you have heard his podcast called Think Fast, Talk Smart. And if you haven't, I would encourage you to listen to that. It's an interesting podcast. I've heard it a few times, and I really like it. And now he has a new book called Think Faster, Talk Smarter, How to Speak Successfully When You Are Put on the Spot. So I guess it's my turn to put Matt now on the spot. So Matt, here you are.
Thank you. You might want to save that until you hear what I have to say. Communication is operationalized empathy. It is the way that we show connection with people. And empathy is what makes us unique. It is the way that we connect and build trust in our personal lives and in our work lives. The ability to connect is what leads to engagement, as well as deep connection to the mission and vision values of an organization. So today I'd like to spend some time talking about how we best can connect in an age of AI. To start with, to learn communication, we need to do communication. So I'm going to ask you to read this sentence. And what's more important to me than the meaning of the sentence is I'd simply like you to count the number of F's, the number of F's. Keep it quiet to yourself. How many F's do you see in this sentence? I'll give you 3 or 4 seconds to do this. Shh, keep it quiet. You guys are worse than my MBA students. All right, raise your hand if you found 3 F's. How many found 3? Okay, several of you, excellent. Anybody find 4? I know the people in the front row found 5. Anybody find 5? How about 6? There are actually 6 F's in this sentence. What 2-letter word ending in F do you see? Of. Finished, files, scientific, and then the 3 ofs. Why do I start every single lecture, every single talk I give with this activity? I'll tell you. The first time I saw this, I found 3, I felt stupid, and I like to pass that feeling. No. I do it because this is an exact analogy of what we're going to do here today. Many of us in this room, myself included, were not as effective as we could have been. Why? We miss little things that make a big difference. And the same thing is true when we try to influence and connect with people. So today I want to walk us through some additional F's. We're going to cover 4 F's that if you keep in mind when you create messages, you will be more effective, you'll be more persuasive, and you'll be better connected. So let's get started. Our first F is focus. We have to focus our communication. All of you in this room, when you communicate, you suffer from an affliction. You suffer from the curse of knowledge and the curse of passion. You know too much about what you're communicating on, and you care too much about it. And as a result, you start too deep, you go too technical too quickly, you use jargon and acronyms, and you can lose your audience. The only antidote to the curse of knowledge is empathy and curiosity. You have to be curious about your audience to understand what they know and what they need to know, and empathetic enough to change your messages accordingly. I know how most of us craft our messages. We beg, borrow, and steal every slide we've ever created. We slam it all together and create what I call a Frankendeck. You know how Frankenstein's an amalgamation of body parts? And then we deliver it and we go, why didn't that hit? Why didn't that land? It never could have. We have to focus. We have to solve the curse of knowledge and curse of passion. Which means we have to do reconnaissance, reflection, and research on our audience. Many of us are mistakenly guided by the success principle of just getting the information out. That's not success. Success is, did the audience understand and take away what you wanted them to? So it's not about what you want to say, it's about what they need to hear, which means we have to do reconnaissance, reflection, and research about our audiences. And you can do this by asking people. If you're speaking at a conference or on a panel, you ask the organizer or moderator. Cyber stalk the people that you're speaking in front of. Check out their LinkedIn profiles, their Substack posts, their podcast guesting. Learn about them so you can tailor your material. So the question becomes, what do I need to know about my audience so I can focus? There are 3 key aspects I believe you need to think about. First is, what is their knowledge level? How much do they know about your topic? Raise your hand if in the last 2 weeks you've been part of a communication where somebody started too high level or too low level for your knowledge. How many of you have had that happen? Yeah, look at that. Lots of hands going up. How does it feel? Well, it sucks. Either you know it and you're like, I'm wasting my time, or you don't know it and you're panicked. So we have to target the knowledge level appropriately. Second, we have to think about attitudes. Are they likely in favor of what we're saying or not? You should craft different content based on your likelihood of the audience being in favor of what you're saying or not. And then perhaps most importantly, we need to be thinking about what are their areas of resistance, hesitation, and concern. Whenever you communicate, written or spoken, people are filtering what you're saying through their resistance, hesitation, and concern. They might be worried that it costs too much money, takes too much time, requires too much change. So you have to address that in your communication. So it's knowledge, attitudes, and resistance. That helps us focus our message and overcomes the curse of knowledge and curse of passion. But we also have to focus on the channel through which we deliver the information. Research suggests that the best way to get a point across is to have a multi-channel approach. Maybe you speak it in front of a group and then you send an email to report it. Maybe you send it as a Slack and then follow up in a subsequent meeting. You have to think about the right channel and focus your message appropriately and adjust and adapt by channel. And then finally, when it comes to focus, we need to be thinking about the specifics of where we're targeting our information. Whenever you go to persuade somebody, you have to think about, where do I put my persuasion? Do I put it behind all the promoting reasons why somebody should change? Or do I focus on the restraining forces, the things that prevent them from changing? Let me give you an example. Raise your hand if you are a parent in the room. Okay, lots of parents. Excellent, very good. I need your advice. When my kids were young, they hated eating their vegetables. They did not like eating their vegetables. They didn't like the way they looked or tasted. Now, you would think that my wife and I could get our kids to eat vegetables. I'm a communication guy, and she has a PhD in psychology. You think we could figure it out. We couldn't. We failed miserably. The reason we failed miserably is we focused exclusively on all the promoting messages. Eat your vegetables, you'll be healthy. Eat your vegetables, you'll grow up and be big and strong. Eat your vegetables, you'll be like your favorite sports hero. None of these were persuasive enough to get our kids to eat their vegetables. Why? The restraining forces were too high. It wasn't until we targeted our messages at the restraining forces, the look and the taste, that we had any success. Now, please do not judge me, but let me tell you, putting ice cream sprinkles on broccoli can change your life. True story, I have pictures. My point is this. When you go to persuade, you have to decide, where do I focus my messaging? Most of us, by default, focus on all the reasons why we should do something. People can agree with the reason why, but if the restraining forces are so high, costs too much, takes too much time, don't have the resources, it doesn't matter. So your messaging might be better served to focus on the restraining forces. And it's not binary, you can do both. So when it comes to focus, we need to understand our audience, knowledge, attitudes, and resistance. We have to think about the right channel for the right message and tailor it. And then finally, we have to be thinking about, do we focus on promoting or restraining or both? So it is through focus that we begin to be effective in our communication. But it's not enough. We also have to focus on fidelity. Fidelity is the accuracy and clarity of your messaging. Now, some of you in this room are of my vintage, and we remember actually listening to music on records, LPs, hi-fi stereos. The phi in hi-fi stood for fidelity. It means quality and accuracy. Your messages need to have high fidelity. 2 key ways to increase the fidelity of your messages. First, you must have a clear goal. Many of us in our communication just take our audience on a journey of our discovery of what we're saying while we're saying it. In other words, we say way more than we need to. My mother has an amazing saying I try to live my life by. Tell the time, don't build the clock. Many of us, when we communicate, say much more than we need to. A way to make sure that our messages hit the mark is to have a clear goal. To me, a goal has 3 parts: information, emotion, and action. What do I want my audience to know? How do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do? Know, feel, do. The knowing is the information you want to get across. That's why you're communicating. Now you have to tailor it based on what you thought about your audience earlier. Knowledge, attitudes, resistance. So if I'm doing a pitch, I have to adjust it for one audience versus the other based on what I know. So information comes first. But then we need to think about emotion. Many of us forget emotion. Yet we have known for millennia, thousands of years, that emotion matters. Neuroscience more recently has taught us that emotions get into our brain differently than information. It gets in faster, stays longer, and motivates behavior more. So you need to be thinking, do I want my audience excited or supportive, validated, fear of missing out, confident? What's the emotion? And then finally, you need to think about action. Most communication strives towards action. But you have to be very clear on what that action is. The biggest mistake entrepreneurs make is they aren't clear when they make their ask. They'll say things like, I want your support. But what the hell does that mean? Does it mean writing a check? Does it mean a like on social media, opening up the Rolodex? Be specific. So by having a goal, you focus your message. You make it high fidelity. My goal at this very minute is I want you to leave here knowing best practices to improve your influential communication so you can connect better. I want you to feel confident that you can use these tools and maybe even excited. And ultimately, I want you to put a few of the things I say today into your upcoming communication. So a goal doesn't just help with fidelity. It also helps you assess your success. I have the good fortune to travel all over the place teaching communication skills. And when I ask people, how do you know if your communication was successful? You know the number one answer I get? I got through it. As if survival is the way to measure success. That's ridiculous. Instead, you should say, does the audience leave knowing what I want them to know, feeling how I want them to feel, do what I want them to do? So helping with fidelity is this notion of having a clear goal. The goal then leads to the second step for fidelity, which is having a structure. Most of us, when we communicate, we make the mistake of just itemizing and listing information. We put lots of bullet points on slides. Bullets kill. Don't kill your audience with bullet points. I'll ask you this. When you go to the grocery store, how many items do you need to buy before you actually have to write it down? If you're like me, it's 3. Anything over 3, I'm going to forget. We're not good with lists, yet that's how many of us communicate. Instead of using a list, I suggest you use a structure or a framework. A structure and a framework are nothing more than a logical connection of ideas. You all know structure. If you've ever seen a television ad, you've seen structure. Problem, solution, benefit. Most television ads are in this structure. They tell you about some issue, challenge in the world. They explain how their product or service fixes that issue or challenge. And then they tell you the benefits. Problem, solution, benefit. I don't care if you're selling automobiles, medicines, or alcohol. Most ads are in that structure. A structure is easy to remember. Now, I want to introduce you to my favorite structure in the whole world. I call it the Swiss Army knife of structures. It's 3 simple questions. What? So what? Now what? What? So what? Now what? The what is the information you're conveying. It's your idea, your product, your service, your update, your feedback, your answer to a question. The so what is why is it important and relevant to your audience? And the now what is what comes next. Maybe what comes next is, hey, let's set up another meeting, or let me take your questions. You can use this in myriad ways. Let's imagine you're on the agenda at a meeting tomorrow, and you have to give an update on your project. The what is your update? You explain your update. You then explain why it's important, how it's helping you achieve your goals, your KPIs. That's the so what. And then the now what is the next step. Maybe that next step is, here are the things I'm going to do and the contingencies that I am depending on. What, so what, now what? You can use this for writing. I don't know about you, but I get lots of emails that are confusing. I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the heck the person wants. Wouldn't it be great if the subject line was the now what, the action you want me to take, and the body of the email was the what and the so what? All of a sudden, it's easier. Now, so far, I've only talked about communication and persuasion that's planned, where you have time to think about it in advance. Yet the reality is, most of our communication doesn't happen like that. It happens in the moment. Somebody asks you a question. You need to make small talk. You make a mistake, and you have to fix it. You have to give feedback. Most of our communication is in the moment. What, so what, now what is your friend? Let's imagine we come out of a meeting together, and you turn to me and say, what do you think? How'd that meeting go? Well, I don't have my slide deck ready to tell you. I didn't know you were going to ask me the question. So I can give you feedback in what, so what, now what. I might say, I thought the meeting went well, except when you talked about the implementation plan. You spoke quickly and didn't give as much detail as you did elsewhere. That's the what. When you speak quickly, without a lot of detail, people think you're not prepared or you're nervous. That's the so what. Next time you cover this topic, slow down and include these 2 additional bits of information. That's the now what. So by simply answering those 3 questions, I provide you with a very clear, high-fidelity message that you can take to heart. And by the way, it made my own thinking clearer. So it helps fidelity with you and the person who receives it. So once you are focused on your audience, your channel, and where you're targeting your message, you craft a goal, know, feel, do, and then you make sure to leverage a structure. Our third F has to do with framing. Words matter. The words you use must be clear and understandable. We need to remove the jargon, the acronyms, the scientific speak, the technical talk. I have a colleague at Stanford's Business School. His name's Huggy Rao. And Huggy likes to call it jargon monoxide. It suffocates the communication. You need to remove that information so that your audience understands you clearly. I happened to do some work for the US government. I was at a military base, and I said what I just said to all of you, and a gentleman raised his hand and said, we do not have that problem here. And I almost fell over, because nowhere are there more acronyms than in the military. From the time I walked in the door to the room I was doing my training in, it sounded like alphabet soup. And I looked at him and I said, tell me more. What do you mean? He said, we have a GOAT for that. I said, a goat? You sacrifice an animal and everybody understands the terms? What do you mean? He said, no, we have a glossary of acronyms and terms. In other words, they had so many, they codified it and they gave it an acronym. You must define your terms so people understand them. In addition, you have to think about how your words can affect people and influence them. Framing by word choice is a very powerful persuasive tool. Let me give you an example. This is my favorite research study on words and framing. What the researchers did is they went to a group of people and they said, imagine you have a terrible disease. We have a potential cure. It has a 67% failure rate. Would you like to take it? They then went to another group of people, just like this group, and they said, imagine you have a terrible disease. We have a potential cure. It has a 33% success rate. Would you like to take it? Time out. Would you agree I just said the same thing? Who takes the treatment more? The 33%. When you frame things as what the academics call a gain frame, where people have something to gain, people are more likely to be persuaded by it. So the language you use matters. So instead of trying to pitch you on an idea by telling you about the problem I'm solving, maybe I pitch it as an opportunity to improve something. I can make that choice. A problem can be framed as an opportunity as a problem. Which do I decide? Well, it depends on what you know about your audience and what will motivate them. So think about the words you use. We have to communicate clearly, so we have to get rid of acronyms, technical speak, etc. And then we additionally have to use words that can help motivate in our direction. Words matter. They help you connect and they help you focus. Well, our final F here has to do with feeling. As I mentioned earlier, emotions matter. Now, many people in this valley say to me, I'm communicating something technical, something financial, something scientific. There's no emotion there. And I disagree vehemently. If you're talking about bits and bytes, if you're talking about science and technology, there is emotion. If you are saving trees, saving time, saving lives, then you can talk about emotion. So you need to bring emotion into your communication. It has to be authentic. It has to be relevant and important, but emotion matters. Instead of just throwing numbers at people, tell a story. Instead of just delivering information matter-of-factly, use emotion in how you deliver it. And tell people how you feel. Say, I'm really excited or I'm very concerned. When you name your feeling, research suggests your audience begins to appreciate it and maybe even empathetically connect to it, which helps you. So emotion is a critical part of helping people focus. When you start a presentation or a meeting, start with connection and emotion first. Tell us a story. Take a poll. Ask people or share with people a startling statistic. Have people count the number of F's on a screen. This is an emotional activity. Most people start presentations like this. Hi, my name is, and today I'm going to tell you about. Boring and silly because you're standing in front of a screen that has your name and has your title. Nowhere is this sillier than the way we start meetings. How does every meeting start? By reviewing the previous meeting. Let me get this right. Most people don't like going to meetings, so I'm going to remind you of the last meeting you didn't like going to in this meeting. Instead, start with something that's compelling. Every meeting invite I send out, first and foremost, has a title that does not include the word meeting or any synonym for the word meeting. Try it. Schedule a meeting without the word meeting or something like it in the title. It makes it an action. People are more likely to be motivated by action than the word meeting. Second, every meeting I ever set up has a question or challenge in the invite. And the very first thing we do in the meeting is we talk about the question or we address the challenge. People actually tell me they're excited to come to the meeting to address the challenge or the question. If you can lead with emotion, you will connect people. And when you connect with people, you can then influence them and build trust. Through these 4 F's, focus, fidelity, framing, and feeling, you can demonstrate empathy, build connection, and influence. And this is critical in a world of social media, of AI, and in globalization. Now you have to put these things into practice. The only way to get better at communication is 3 things: repetition, reflection, and feedback. You need to practice. You need to find opportunities to get the reps. If you've ever taken on a new sport or a musical instrument, you have to practice. Find trusted others that you can practice with. Join Toastmasters, take a class, learn to practice. Second, you have to reflect. Many of us are just so glad to have the presentation or meeting over with, we don't think what worked and what didn't. That's that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again without expecting different results. It won't happen. Take time to reflect. Every night before I go to bed, I spend 1 minute and I write down one thing that went well in my communication and one thing that didn't that day. And on Sunday nights, I spend 5 minutes going through my list and I make a plan for the following week to lean into the things that worked and to address the things that didn't. That's how you build and change your communication. And then finally, you need feedback. We are not the best judges of our own communication. We need others to help us and give feedback. Another great way to get feedback, as painful as it sounds, especially if you're doing oral communication, is to record yourself and watch. My Stanford MBA students, when they do a presentation in my class, they get recorded and they watch not once, not twice, but 3 times. The first time they watch without listening, second time they listen without watching, and then finally they do both. They hate it, but they love it. I tell everybody the class is like going to the dentist. Nobody likes going, but everybody's glad they went. As a result, their communication gets better. So my challenge to you is to take these 4 F's and put them into your communication so you can be more influential, more connected, and demonstrate the empathy that our world needs today. Now, I'd like to leave you with some resources. As Paul shared with you when he introduced you, I've written a new book, Think Faster, Talk Smarter. It's all about how to speak better in the moment. I host the podcast, Think Fast, Talk Smart. We just finished, literally this past Tuesday, we released our 200th episode. We have won lots of prestigious awards, but the award I am most proud of is Best Dog Walking Podcast. Our episodes are 20 minutes long, and apparently people walk their dogs for 20 minutes. It's all about communication skills, how to improve and hone your communication skills. We're the #1 careers podcast in 107 countries. Take the time to learn and improve your communication. With that, I will simply say thank you. Have a good evening and a good rest of your conference. Thank you.